Good morning, everybody. I'm here again with therapist Jen Morley from Boulder Counseling. And today we are talking about how to prepare for sleep deprivation and anxiety in the prenatal period. So if you are pregnant, thinking about becoming pregnant, if you have applied and then are on a list waiting for a baby through adoption, or you are intended parents, every way that families grow, if you are in the wait and you don't have the baby quite yet, what are the things you can do to prepare? So, Jen, why don't you start us off with what we should be doing in the prenatal period to get ready for a healthy, well-adjusted growth of our family?
Okay. I'm like therapist caveat. Healthy, well-adjusted may not be comfortable and it may not look like what you wanted it to look like. And
Yes,
it could
thank
totally
you.
fall under healthy, well-adjusted. Um, so the very beginning, as soon as we get pregnant, even when we decide that we're going to bring another baby into our life or a baby into our life, um, we're already starting to change our identity. So specifically, I'll speak to first, if you're actually pregnant, your identity is gonna start to change immediately because you're gonna feel different.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that is like, I would normally get up and go to the gym, and then you're like, I'm going nowhere. I'm gonna throw up and go back to bed. So before it's happening, I think it can sound like, oh, I'm pregnant. But it also you begin already to lose your old identity. So for some people, there's quite a bit of grief and to start to take on the identity of the parent. And some big parts of parents is that who you were and your agenda is now streamlined into what is needed for your child. And so that becomes actually physically demanded if you're
Mm-hmm.
pregnant. And I bring that up because regardless of how you have a child come into your life, there's a point where you knew who you were before baby, and then slowly, and then once the baby shows up very quickly, who you are doesn't exist anymore, most of it. And in some ways that's really exciting because there's all of this potential. It's like the whole universe is yours, but in order to step into that potentiality, you have to come kind of from nothingness, which is really hard. Is all of a sudden you don't know yourself. So while you're planning to have a baby, or also your marriage is changing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, your relationships to your friends are changing. I remember personally, my husband went skiing with all of our friends when I was 6 months pregnant. I was not psyched about that. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
say anything to him because I wanted him to go, but I just remember thinking, oh, this feels very real. It's not like I'm just being nice to not go. It's really unsafe for me to go, at least in my personal assessment of that. And just how hard that was for me. I'm very like outdoorsy and athletic, and I love being with my friends, and just starting to be like, my life's going to be real different. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things about preparing to have a baby to come in is commonly we can often perceive that the most okay thing is to say how great it's going to be and how happy we are and it's all wonderful and there's little tiny socks, and finding a place, maybe a therapist, really soon to start to be able to be candid about what's actually happening for you, and also explore it, because there's a good chance it will surprise you, especially if it's your first time around. And sometimes, Sarah, you might be able to speak to this too. Even if it's your second or your third or your fourth child, sometimes you're going to get surprised by what that's like to you and how you
Mm-hmm.
see it changing and that experience. So right from the beginning, we start to have this really profound experience of becoming a mom, but also means kind of unbecoming a single adult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, it's rich, it's fertile, and fertile things are made out of poo sometimes, right? So it's just both. It's both things. And so really setting yourself up prenatal. We're going to go to postnatal in a minute. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
so I'll put a pin in that. Prenatally preparing to start to have some loss. It's not just all going to be tiny, yummy smelling things and baby diapers, and there's also loss and hopes and fears. And the biggest thing is the unknown. who we think we're going to be as a mother or at any point in our life is rarely exactly what it looks like. And so
Mm-hmm.
the person that we used to be is gone, and the person that we're becoming can surprise us. And being ready to feel lost and confused. I feel like I'm being a little negative. It is, it's profound, right? Just like how we all do this and even and keep signing up day after day. And the reason I'm focusing on that part is the part that I hear women coming in and saying like, I'm not like really doing great. It's
Yeah.
like it's a secret. And I want to say, guess what? It's not actually a secret, because every woman, and
Yes.
also often, let's not leave like everybody else out. It's not just women. Everyone, dads and whatever identity you are that's having a new baby, they come in and it's like this secret that like, I'm a little scared. I'm maybe angry at my partner. I wanted like, so I see a lot of people who are angry at their partner. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, he gets to just go skiing and
Mm-hmm.
I'm fat and whatever else, like,
Yes.
um, so really what I want to do is say, you're going to get more of that rich, yummy, yummy, amazing thing that we're all so into about becoming moms. If we're also honest about the stuff that feels sticky and a little dark and a little stinky.
Yes, absolutely. I totally relate to that. I remember people saying, "Oh, especially as my bump was showing with the first, oh, you must be so excited. You must be so excited. Um, have you dreamed about this for your whole life?" And I was like, well, yeah, I've always wanted to be a mom. I wanted a huge family. Like I had this dream for my life, but now that I'm pregnant, I'm 60% sure I want kids. And
Right?
people would look at me like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, if I'm honest, and I love what Brene Brown says, that people earn the right to hear our story. So if there were people that have earned the right to hear my story, people like you and people like close friends, I would say I'm 60% sure I want this. And that's real for people. And it's because, I explain it, it's like going to Disneyland. Everybody has this romantic dream about it. It's going to be so much fun, blah, blah, blah. But if you look at the facts, it's super expensive. There are long lines. It is hot. It is like a hot, sticky place to go. It is not the perfect location for it. It is the most expensive thing you'll ever do in a couple days for your, and it's just like, there's a lot of things that are real difficulties about this thing, but everybody keeps thinking about the dream of Disney. That's how I felt about parenthood, that I walked in knowing that there is going to be some of that unknown and that my anxiety was real. And I didn't know everything, and I was worried about that, and I didn't have a therapist yet, so I was navigating on my own. So I'm just glad we're talking about it, that it's not necessarily you're pregnant, yay. As a birth doula, I know, and serving as a surrogate, we haven't talked about that before on this program, but I was a gestational carrier for this local family who the mom lost her uterus carrying her second baby. And as a gestational carrier, the whole reason I wanted to be a surrogate is because of the 1 in 8 fertility or infertility rate. 1 in 8 families are dealing with not being able to get pregnant or stay pregnant. So just because somebody is pregnant does not mean it's all joy filled. I'm sure you as a therapist see this a lot. There is a ton of fear that it's not actually going to happen, that perhaps that pregnant person is going to do something, like they're worried, like what if I eat or do something or get in a car accident or sleep funny or forget to do this thing and I cause it. Like there's a lot of panic around the loss of control about whether or not you're going to miscarry or have a stillbirth. I mean, the whole gamut of feeling is real, and hope and excitement is not the only thing going on. So I think just holding a place for it and allowing your expectations to be open for whatever you are experiencing. And I agree, I'm going to plug that, get your therapist as soon as possible. And also get a tribe of people around you that are supportive and helpful. And I mean, one of my biggest suggestions, if you are just starting down the path of becoming an intended parent, meaning you're gonna you have a surrogate that's gonna work with you, or you're adopting, or you're pregnant or want to be pregnant, my biggest advice is to join a group of people going through that, because if you can be pregnant along people that are also after loss, or you can be pregnant for the first time with somebody else that's pregnant for the first time, that sense of community with people that understand is super helpful.
Yeah. Sarah, I love that. That's as a therapist, I'm always, um, so the central tenet of many of the like, diagnostic criteria and all this stuff is isolation.
Mm,
And so we find inside deep anxiety and deep depression and all kinds of things. Like when we go far enough down kind of unwellness, we end up alone. And
yeah.
so really the primer to so many things is just don't be alone.
Yes.
I remember I joined a yoga prenatal group, and I consider myself quite the yogi. Like I've been doing yoga since I was like 15 or something. The yoga was not the point. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Not yoga. But everyone would talk, and I needed to hear other mamas talking about how terrified they were or how upset
Mhm.
they were. And I needed to be able to have like 2 minutes to just be like, ah, or like, yay, or whatever it was in a room of people. Like I could talk to my husband all day, but he could not feel his like abdomen separating to make room for a thing that was growing.
Yes. And all
I
the,
didn't know.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's all the stuff going on in the head. So yeah, the backstory, probably my passion for families facing infertility is that I mean, I have a whole blog series about why I became a surrogate. I won't get into that, but one thing is that it took us almost 2 years to get pregnant the first time with our oldest daughter. By the way, in her room, if you're like, what is that barrage of zoo animals back there? I'm in her room. Um, Jen and I are rolling with it. I've got pancake batter in my hair. She's got kid schmutz and spit up on her jacket, and she's coming from a workout, and I'm got construction people in the kitchen, but we are here for you. But anyways, one of my background reasons that I'm so passionate about infertility is our experience, because I really believed for those 2 years that it would never happen. Like I lived with that dread. And so I found myself going to a prenatal yoga class uh, with all of these huge bellies. And if you, if you didn't know this was happening, I know you know this is happening, Jen, but if you are a pregnant person, didn't know this is happening, this is happening. I went just to be around pregnant people, hoping it would help. And I could just like weep thinking about that. I even shared that one time where they're like, let's go around and share how far along we are. And I was like, I've been trying for 2 years, and I just want to be around the baby juju, and like, in just having people hear me and me saying it out loud was like, still made me feel not alone. And it was a very lovely moment. And people were like, come rub my belly, maybe it's good luck. And they were very friendly and helpful about it. But not everybody is in a happy place when that's happening, but it's a real thing. And there's a lot of families dealing with those feelings, just like we are. So
Right. And it's actually a minority of folks who that like it just goes clean and clear.
yes.
Like the oopsie babies that like, oh, we're pregnant and now everything's fine.
Yes.
Not it's not the story we got sold. So
Yeah.
yeah. Do you want to do fourth trimester?
Yes. Okay. So we could talk about that all day. Let's we want to talk about planning for the fourth trimester, and specifically I'm going to talk about sleep and then we're going to talk about what other resources there are besides just sleep. So one thing I think helps a lot with anxiety, it helped with my anxiety, was just some information. I think a little bit of information, not too much. That's a tenet of my program, is simple. Like I don't want to give you the 502-page Dr. Wise Bluth version of sleep. I hope all sleep coaches read it. But for the general parent, that's not important. So what I want to go over is just some simple expectations of what sleep is going to look like in your baby. And some other things I think you can do to have a more aware and present fourth trimester. I won't call it good or bad, just a more present fourth trimester. So the first tip is just to set your expectations properly. So I want people, yes, Lo, I want all families, all people to know you can do less. You can let some things go, like what your house looked like, what your social schedule looked like, what your relationships looked like can change, and that's okay and likely to happen. I want you to set boundaries. And this is hard for a lot of people, but it's really, really important. To me, it's part of parenting. You're going to be setting boundaries for now until infinity. And what I mean by that is specifically only invite people into your postpartum, your fourth trimester. So this can be just the first few months or the first year or so after you give birth. We can call the first trimester or the fourth trimester. I'm considering it the first 3 months after your baby is born. Only invite people into your space that are good energy for you, that are supportive, and that are helpful. So this is not the time where you have to entertain and
Right.
have guests. Have visitors that feel like home and feel like family. Like invite people over that will look at you and say, oh my word, Jen, I'm looking at your hair. I'm going to hold this baby. Go wash your hair without the baby screaming, on the floor. Like just go do it. Let me rock the baby, or let me like bring you your favorite caramel macchiato from Starbucks. Let me just invite over people that are going to do that for you. They're going to walk in and say like, hey, I'm sure your dog hasn't been out. I'm just going to take it for a walk. And just people that are going to assume that you need help. Like acts of service is a really helpful thing at this time. I think a lot of folks have a misconception that the visitors are supposed to come over and hold the baby. And really what I needed is for other people to handle the things that allowed me to just go lay in bed with my baby. And nurse. And so it just feel free to set boundaries and take care of you. And it's, I've done both, where I've had a postnatal experience where I had all my boundaries and I had this amazing meal train and my friends were sending me food, but not visiting. I was like, I don't have the energy to even talk with you. So just leave it in the cooler outside. And they're like, yes, of course. Those are the friends you want. And then I also had a postpartum experience where I felt like I should be the one making dinner for extended family as they came. And I had a 10-week-old and I was triple feeding and, pumping at work and things like that. So just learn from my lack of boundaries that once you start setting boundaries, it's super, super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another version of change, right? So relationships where we would want to give more, even your extended family you want to cook for and everything. Maybe sometimes you resent it. Maybe sometimes you love it. Like I love it. But it's just so different, and starting to see yourself different. Like I'm not maybe going to be the person who has a great cheese plate every time someone drops in. Like that's no longer how I get to know myself.
Mm-hmm. And I will say that stuff is coming back, which is great. I mean, my youngest is 3 and I'm finding myself working out more and entertaining more and doing more for others than, than I was able to. And it feels great because that is an important part of my identity as a human individual that is able to kind of blossom again. So it's not gone forever, but as we are in these transitions, just feel bold enough to ask for what you need, and if somebody's like, oh, how can I help? And you have something top of mind, please say, I need you to fold those towels that are in the dryer. And if that's going to help, believe me, all people that love you want to do is help. So if there's something easy they can do, please let them know. So that would be.
I have to tell you, a girlfriend of mine who had a baby right before I did, she was like, she was pregnant with her second when I was pregnant with my first. She came up with this thing. She created a document that was a list of things people can do when they come to the house.
Yes.
And so she actually printed it out and put it on her fridge. And then when people are like, what can I do? She's like, there's a list on the fridge. And I did that.
Thank you.
It was so helpful because when you're like, I'm nursing and like, I'm hungry, like I need water and like, whatever's happening, however you're feeding your baby and getting your food and all. And then someone's like, how can I help? You're like, I don't know. Okay. Like, I'm barely above water here. But if you have a list, you just like, I'm going to check the list. It's like, load the dishwasher, sweep the floor, walk the dog. Like, And it's all these things when I was pregnant, I'm like, well, these seem really obvious. But once I had given birth, it was like, I had nothing left in my brain. You could ask me a question, like, I have no idea. And I just, I think I had cat-like reflexes. I would be like, whoa, like I could catch anything. And like, all of a sudden I was, part of it is hypervigilance and less fight or flight, but I could barely remember my name. So that's like, just some of that's the prepping piece. But then in terms of therapy and mental wellness in the 4th trimester, whether you're just whether you gave birth or this is your, first three months at home with your new person that you have, certainly if you gave birth, your hormones are going to be, this cannot be overstated. You might feel the deepest, most profound joy. You might feel the darkest version of depression you have ever seen. You might see all of these things. And so it's preparing in advance. And also if you have a partner with you, your husband or whoever else is raising your baby with you, and the people who you trust, talking with them in advance too, like, hey, can you be with me in those times? Are you, figuring out who are the people that you can call when you're like, I think I ruined my life. Like, is that your husband? Is that your partner? Who is that?
Yeah.
And then remembering, having them help you remember, like, this is partly just part of this process. Yeah. Some of it is real grief. Some of it is just, you have not slept. Some of it is hormonal. There's just so many pieces of just, there's like a Buddhist idea of riding the waves. Instead of believing that the wave is reality forever, right? And so having people, preparing yourself, and you'll lose track of it. So having people around you who you've prepped to, like, help me remember that it's waves, and then will you sit with me on the waves?
Yes. That was some of the best advice I ever got. My friend Melissa is a therapist in Boulder. We should talk and see if y'all know each other.
Yeah.
I called her one time when my baby wasn't sleeping, and I said, I need some mantra or some nugget. And she's like, the best thing I can tell you is to not universalize. Like, today will not always be your reality. It will not always be this hard. Your baby will not always sleep in 25-minute chunks. Your breast won't always hurt this bad. And you won't always have this much energy. So the good and the bad, and that's what she was saying, is everything's a wave and it's fluid, and tomorrow can be, like grace is new every morning. It can be completely different every day. And I tell my pregnant friends that have anxiety about that, same thing. Like, you won't always feel this sick. It will get better. And, every day is different as a parent. So I love that advice.
Right. Setting yourself up. I'm looking at the time. We're almost done.
Yes.
That 4th trimester, to me, it was really helpful. I had heard that term before. So I want to leave that with people. Like, I was sort of like, what is happening? And so it was really helpful. Like, 4th trimester, hormones, sleep deprivation. Because I saw myself in a way that I was like, holy moly, and by grace, my husband, I can't even, to this day, I'm just astonished about how he just rolled with how I showed up from moment to moment as I was just riding those waves, baby. That thing of this is just happening right now, I think was a major life raft. And that's the piece that we can't always quite get in the 4th trimester on our own. And so that's, if you can get a therapist, and while you're pregnant, if you don't already have a therapist, it's awesome, because they're going to know who you were before. So they're going to help you track your gains and losses and changes so that they can see from the side of the forest. And then they're also going to be there, because one of the hardest things of going to therapy is finding a therapist. There's a majillion in Google, but finding the one that can see you, and also the ones that you're like, I just want to talk to this person. We know all the data points to, it does not matter what kind of training your therapist has. It does not matter what degree they have. What matters is you feel comfortable talking to them.
I laugh because my therapist, I joke with her every session where I'm like, how can we accidentally run into each other at the Starbucks at Target? Because I just want to walk around Target with you. Like, that's the kind of therapist you want. Like, I'm glad you're not my therapist, Jen, because we could hang out and be friends.
Yeah.
But you want somebody that you're like, dang, why did we meet professionally? Because you're really on my inner circle. That's like,
Right?
how I
That's
think of it.
exactly it, Sarah.
Yeah.
Somebody you feel like you would just tell them anything anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you don't have to protect their feelings or make sure they get a fair amount of time talking, which is what you'd have to do with a normal friend, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Okay, let's briefly go over some just expectations about baby sleep in the fourth trimester. And then we'll talk about resources briefly. Just, I know we could go off the rails about this because we're so passionate about getting people support prenatally and in the fourth trimester. So babies, here's the great news, everybody. You cannot spoil a baby, especially in the first couple months. Okay, babies don't even have a circadian rhythm till 3 months. That means some good news and bad news, and I won't put labels on it, but babies sleep and eat on a 24-hour clock. So that means they might be sleeping a lot during the day. When they come home, they might be eating a lot at night. That is totally normal. As biological creatures, they do not have a circadian rhythm until 3 months. So what does this mean? That means snuggle a lot. Yes, sleep when your baby sleeps as much as you can. Let some of those dishes and household chores go. Your sleep is going to be interrupted for a while. If you want to look back, that first video Jen and I shot together, we talked about how to get a 5-hour stretch. That strategy is really important in this first 3 months. You're going to start getting one long, and I say long, and that might be 3-4 hours when you start. You might get 1 long hour of stretch once your baby is up to birth weight. So a lot of times this is around the 10-day mark, sometimes 2 weeks, they're back up to birth weight. Everything that you hear about sleep and your baby's health should go through 2 filters. You can hear it from me, then I want you to take it through your filter. As a mother and as a father, you know your baby best. Your intuition is pure with your children. I don't know your children as well as you do. The other person you should take this advice through is your pediatrician. So you can hear from me that when they're up to birth weight, you might get a long stretch. Check your gut, check your baby, talk to your pediatrician who knows their health. So a lot of times what this looks like is that you're going to feed every 2.5 hours during the day. And then it's a late bedtime for newborns, like 10 o'clock, give or take an hour. When you put them down, perhaps you don't wake them for their next feed. And then when they sleep, let's say 3 hours instead of that 2.5, like they have been, that one stretch is going to lengthen and lengthen because you're not going to wake to feed them for that one stretch. And then during the rest of the night, they're going to get up several times. And once their little digestion comes back online after that, maybe 4-hour stretch, they are going to wake up more frequently. And then during the day, again, we're getting a lot of calories in, breastfeeding, skin to skin, formula feeding, whatever you're doing as often as your feeding schedule allows, but we're going to have a lot of food during the day. We're going to let that long stretch happen once per night is usually how that works. As they approach 6 weeks, my advice is to start a bedtime routine. You don't have to, out of the gate, have a 30-minute bath, massage, twinkle. You don't have to do that out the gate, but maybe around 6-8 weeks, you start it. I want you to plan something that you love to do. So if you do not like singing, do not make Twinkle Twinkle an integral part of the routine. Right. My husband sings Pearl Jam, Nothing Man, to our girls. He loves to sing. He loves Pearl Jam. That's part of our sleep routine. We also loved Goodnight Moon. I read it every night to my child for 18 months straight, and then she moved on to another book. But what's great about having some of these things in your routine is that when you're traveling or when you're in the car, yeah, he can sing Nothing Man and I can recite Goodnight Moon because I've said it so many times, and it can mimic kind of a routine wherever you are. So choose things that you love, choose a handful of things and make it part of the routine to wind them down, maybe about 25 minutes, 6 to 8 things that you love to do, and that they start seeing predictably, but they actually can't remember their sleep routine yet. So you're doing it for you and to get in the habit in the early stages. Then around 3 months, they will have a circadian rhythm, meaning the light and the dark will signal their hormones in a way that will complement and bolster great sleep. So please don't feel like you can really have any negative habits up to 3 months. At 3 months, you're going to have a routine to put them to bed. They're going to have that one longer stretch at night. It might have even stretched to 5 hours, 6 hours by now, as long as they're getting enough calories in the rest of the day. The other thing is you're going to use sound, like a sound machine, a consistent thing. You're going to shut the drapes at night. You're going to open them in the morning to signal light and dark, because they will be developing their circadian rhythm between 3 and 6 months. And at that point, you're going to let babies that can fall asleep on their own, fall asleep on their own. This is not cried out, but if you've nursed your baby, you've looked at your baby, you've changed your baby, and they are droopy, drowsy, and you're like, they might fall asleep without me rocking them all the way to sleep. At that 3-month mark is a great time to let them start doing that independent onset of sleep. So those would be some of my advice to set some great habits, but don't work too hard with babies under 3 or 4 months. They're just not quite ready for traditional methods. And remember that if you do some sleep training, make sure it really matches with your understanding, and you can intellectually get on board with the science behind what's going on in the method, and that your heart as a parent feels good. Your intuition feels like, yes, this is good. So for me, it wasn't cried out, which is why I have a method that is gentle and step-by-step and age appropriate. So make sure if you're doing sleep support that it is, meeting all of those points. So
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Sarah. I love the idea that I had so many people saying, oh, so many people, how many opinions do we get, right?
All.
If you just let them cry it out for a week, you have to let them just cry it out. It's the only way they're ever going to sleep eventually. And you just make it worse. Every week you don't do it, then and like my soul was like, I cannot do this. There was no like brain thing about right or wrong. It was irrelevant. Like my whole body was like, not happening.
Yes.
And so that piece of like, if cried out is your thing, and you're like, I know that the constitution of my kid and like our little soul team we have here, like this is our best way to go forward, you do it. Like whatever, if you juggle, I don't care what it is, but I have so many mamas and daddies who come in and are kind of doubting the intuition that you talked in the beginning. And if you're
so important,
pick another way, because you have to believe for your kid that it's going to be okay. You have to do that for them. You're going to hold that. And so when they start to be like, I'm scared, I don't know about this falling asleep, you're like, that's okay. We're going to take our time. You're going to learn to sleep, and you're going to learn to sleep really well. So it's okay if we go slow.
Yes.
Know in your heart, like this is the right way. And I know there's so few things that we know that about. So if you feel that about anything, go that way.
Yes. Yes. And if anybody's on the edge, this will be a little plug for my program. Please call me. I have a link on my website where you can call and get a free 13-minute consult, and we'll talk about your child. And some people will ask me all the questions about the methods and crying and how does this work and how do you have so many success stories? And I want you to feel so good about it. Like, to me, it's not a question to me of do I need to help everybody? I need to help the people that feel really great about my program. And if you don't feel great about it, or if sleep is not a problem, if you are co-sleeping with a 3-year-old and it works for your family, keep sleeping with your 3-year-old, and it's, to me, it's every family has to make their own decision. And I am one resource, and there are so many families on this planet to help that I don't have a monopoly on it. And just like you don't have a monopoly on therapy, we just want everybody to get their people. So yeah. And with that, I'll just end with, I'm going to post in the blog, and I'll post it below in the notes on YouTube. I have a local resource list for Denver providers. And I know not everybody's from Denver, but it might give you a sense of what kind of people can you get in your community on your team when you are pregnant and expecting a child and in the 4th trimester. I've got local chiropractors and IBCLC, the breastfeeding specialists, and car seat techs and pediatricians and La Leche League and, postpartum doulas, birth doulas. If you don't have a birth doula, that's another thing with a therapist to help support a great prenatal period too. But I've got just a list of my favorites in the Denver area, and I'd be glad to share that with anybody that is looking for a referral.
Great.
Yeah.
If you are looking for a therapist, I do not have a therapist referral list on my website, but I am so happy to refer you to a therapist. Just like Sarah was saying, I have no need to have everyone want me to be their therapist. Your therapist needs to be your flavor, someone who's like, that's my person that I can just tell right now, like, that's probably one of my people. If you're
Mm-hmm.
listening, like, she's great, but like maybe not my flavor, no problem. I will not take that personally. Send me an email and say, can you tell me therapists in my area or 3 other therapists who would see me? And I'm happy to do that for you. It's no problem. I really want people to get support, because
Yes.
when we have less anxiety, when we have less depression, when we're more integrated in all of the parts of our experience, we have better relationships and we're all more together and we're less isolated, and the world is just better when we're together. So
That's right.
we can do
It's
it.
a great place to end. Thank you so much again, Jen, for your time today. It was awesome to talk to you.
Okay, enjoy.